Hello, I am TJ Cross, and this is Pathfinder Feats and Tricks. Today, I'd like to go over the Leadership Feat. Now, the Leadership Feat, as many people are aware, allows a player to get certain followers in the way of cohorts and regular subordinates. A cohort being a NPC with a character class of 2 or more less than the player themselves, and the subordinates usually being of low level themselves with NPC classes. This is, of course, the Pathfinder edition, which I am most familiar with. Now, most game masters don't like the Leadership Feat when it comes in, due to the fact of how many additional adventurers it can bring into the campaign. For example, a regular 7th level character would only get a 5th level cohort. But since things such as renown, fair treatment, and the charisma score go into this number, a good charisma-based character, say a bard, could easily have a leadership score of 13. Okay, so plus 4 from charisma, or plus 5, and some being able to negotiate with the game master that they've been adventuring this long, particularly in a certain area, so that they would be of renown. Now, a leadership score of 13 would allow a 9th level cohort if the player themselves were 11th level, 10 first level NPCs, and 1 second level. Now, that's one guy with 12 additional NPC assistants. You can see how this could be a problem, even if most of those are low level. So, what I tend to do with the Leadership Feat is allow the character to have a sort of side business that their followers look after. For example, in my current campaign, which is self-made, and it's a lot more work than most would realize, our rogue, upon reaching 7th level, has taken the Leadership Feat. So, I did not automatically give him his followers. He had his cohort, a bandit by the name of Tryon, who they met, I believe, at 2nd level, and he was the only one in the bandit group that survived. But they kept him with them. And only that, when he started helping them, they'd give him an equal cut of the treasure. Now, this isn't something most NPCs will do for a follower. So Tryon, seeing that he was not only being treated fairly, because he, along with the rest, were being healed and protected when harmed, as well as getting a fair share of the loot, stuck with them. It was far more than he was making as a bandit, and he was getting far more reasonable benefits. So even though he was a chaotic neutral, this was the most profitable and beneficial arrangement for him. So he stuck with them from level 2 to where the rogue is, level 7. Now, as it was, I don't let NPCs be any more than a cohort. So, whenever our rogue leveled, so too did our NPC bandit Tryon, at a 2-level penalty. So, when he took the Leadership Feat, he had his cohort. He had Tryon. But he had to go to a city and discuss with the Thieves Guild about getting followers and creating his own branch. So, at 7th level, he had an 11 leadership score due to charisma and his renown in the area, because they had taken out a lot of dangerous beings. So when he got his 6 followers, he didn't take them with him. He left them in a small village, and they were his branch of the Thieves Guild. So periodically through the campaign, I'm going to have him come back to that village, and he'll be able to collect the profits of their business. Now, he had to pay 1,000 gold in order to become an official branch. He has duties that he has to attend with the guild. And, of course, if he's captured, he has nothing to do with the Thieves Guild. But he has his Leadership Feat, he's happy with it, and I don't have to worry about an extra 11 guys coming in and ruining my campaign. Now, he does keep Tryon with him, but an extra guy or 2 is easier to modify your world for than an extra 20. Now, another thing to think of to limit this is, again, where are they getting these followers? Because I don't know about you, but you don't just randomly have a bunch of people show up at your doorstep wanting to throw their lives on the line for you. just doesn't happen. I mean, even if you're a king, they don't randomly show up. They've been training as knights in order to get that grace. And the common adventurer is no king. They're little more than glorified mercenaries, to be honest. So, I usually have to, once you take the leadership feat, you have to find and recruit these members. And just as it suggests, I don't allow them to be one step away from the character's alignment. So, if you're playing a lawful good, you have to, your cohort has, and your minions all have to be either lawful good, or lawful neutral. And there'll be small penalties for if they're one step away from you. For example, a cohort of neutral good will sometimes conflict with the person they're following in times of law versus good. Same with, so, a neutral good and a lawful good, anytime the lawful good goes law over good, his cohort will try to edge him towards the good option, whereas the lawful neutral will edge him to the lawful side. And a further thing, if they bring their cohort or minions with them, they deserve some of the treasure. Otherwise, that is mismanagement. That is, I will see the modifier right now. That can be considered cruelty, not getting proper payment for the work done. It'd be like if you went to work and did not get paid a cent for it. Only when you went to work, people were chucking broadswords at you. You wouldn't stay. I wouldn't stay. But most players don't seem to see that. They think, oh, I have the feat. That means I get them and there's nothing I have to do. No, there's maintenance. If you've ever thought of it in depth, the leadership feat is simply allowing you to take these NPCs. It's not giving them to you. It's not like in AD&D where once you reached X level, all of a sudden these guys came flocking to you. And in fact, even in the feat itself, this feat enables you to attract a loyal cohort and a number of devoted subordinates. It doesn't say you have them, it says it enables. So, they'll have to be in a fairly large population, because, well, high-level cohorts don't hang around in villages very often, and if they do, that village ain't going to give them up. Because there are orcs right around the frickin' corner, and they need that guy. So they'll have to find a city large enough to support an adventuring population. Now, going back to the side business, they don't have to be fighters. Let's say you have a mage. Perhaps he attracts a bunch of experts who are interested in the arcane craft rather than the adepts, which are the closest thing to an NPC wizard class there is. They're actually an NPC divine class. Interestingly enough, there is no NPC wizard class. I usually switch it up so that an adept and an apprentice are the same thing. They just use different spells. But that's a tangent. Now, since there's a limited control the player will actually have unless they go around posting looking for hirelings posters all around, which my players have done before, the people who do get attracted to them can be random. You could have a merchant interested in selling their wares and giving them a top price for things they find. That's a perfectly good use of a follower slot. Perhaps a woodsman. A woodsman is interested in follow the ranger around. Or maybe a veterinarian decides to learn from the druid. See, the interesting thing I find about the leadership feat in my group is that often, when they take the leadership feat, their cohort is their apprentice. So they become very emotionally attached with this cohort and are constantly looking out for them because they're the next in command for them. For example, with our rogue, Razor, he and Tryon, they have the master-student relationship. Okay? Whenever Tryon levels, I usually ask Razor the character, what sort of feat or ability should he take? Because that's what Razor is teaching Tryon. Now, That's not all the time. If I think Trine would pick something. For example, right now Trine is set up to be a sneaky ranger. He has the Ledge Walker and Fast Stealth rogue traits. He's 5th level. And what he tends to do is he tends to move into a flanking position so that he and Razor are behind the enemy while they fight the main force. And then they shoot into the backs of the enemies. And this is a very effective tactic for them. So, moving on. Without the leadership trait, I still do allow for NPC followers, and I do allow them to level. However, they have to be paid in full. They have to be paid the same amount a player character would make. Otherwise, they'll say, I'm not getting a fair cut, I'm out of here. And that, to me, is logical. If I'm risking my arse the same as these guys, and I'm not getting my cut, I'm out. Now, there are some times when this isn't applicable. For example, one of the times they had a character by the name of Lord Riza following them, and he did not take any of the loot. But this was because the plot hook had involved him being one of the reasons why a village got burned to the ground. And it may be silly, but it's because he bought all the horses. The bad guys wanted horses, food, and water, and when they could not get horses, they burned the village to the ground, killed everyone, and took their shit. Now, he followed because he wanted to hunt these guys down and stop them from doing that again, and in a way redeem himself. Now, those type of plot NPCs, they stick around until the plot's finished and they leave. They don't hang around after. They say, you know, I've got my work here is done, I'm moving on. And that's what happened with Lord Riza. When they hunted down and killed the majority of the evildoers, and the last one had some kind of weird mental thingy where he wasn't evil, he's like, my job's done, I'm going back, my family's calling me. Perfectly reasonable. Now, if you do have a character with leadership who wants to bring their full force into it, the thing you do is you have a wizard cast Fireball. Most of their NPCs are going to be level 1. They'll be at least level 7. So, a challenging magic user will be at least 6th level. That's 6d6 damage. Good luck having a level 1 character survive that. Because even if you give them an NPC that gets 1d12 hit points, plus 5 from being maxed out in Constitution and having a Constitution bonus, that's 17 hit points. Now, the average Fireball does about 21 points of damage, if it's a 6d6 Fireball. Because on 2 dice, the most common number you get is 7. So, 7 times 3, or 2 times 3 for 6, 7 times 3, 21, and they're dead. That's it. His NPC's dead. And then, for each one that dies, he loses a point of leadership, because he led them full face into death. Not good. So there he goes from a 13 to an 8. He can't attract nearly as many followers, and he may even lose his cohort, because he'll be like, holy crap, why did you bring them? They weren't ready. To which he says, that's not good leadership. If there's ever a conflict between the leader and his followers, and the leader's answer is not both diplomatic and sensible, his followers, at least some of them, should leave. And I would never allow him to just make a diplomacy check. He would have to roleplay with me as one of the followers why his followers should stay. And depending on his argument, he'll get a bonus or a penalty to his roll. And usually, I double the modifier to leadership score as a penalty to his diplomacy roll already. So, this can make it exceedingly hard, even if they're a very charisma-based character. Because if already they have a -10 on their roll, then they have to talk to me about why they should stay, and I'm already very biased, because I don't like this happening. And that's a good bias, because the remaining followers wouldn't like this happening. Seeing a bunch of their buddies, a bunch of their people, they're like, yeah, we're going to follow this great hero with, die in a horrible, gruesome incineration. They're pretty biased themselves. So, the further it goes like that, and each time that happens, they have to, each time one of their guys dies to a force that they could not fight against, God help them if you send a dragon their way, because all those level 1 followers are dead from a dragon breath or a bite or being eaten alive or something nasty. And the thing is, I don't think it's unfair for the dragons to target weak NPCs. Because, say that character gave every one of them a bow. That means you have potentially, let's say we're just going with the 6 followers. You have potentially up to 66 points of damage from arrows, or 68. Either way, that's a large potential for damage, but they're weak. So a dragon could very easily breathe fire, or a mage could cast fireball. You know, a fighter with the cleave feat, the greater cleave feat, could hack through them like they were nothing, just as a regular hero cuts through goblins at high levels. And it's something that the heroes will do given a chance. Oh, those guys are weak, they're all dead, now we just have the big guy to fight. Because many on one is easier. Well, the villains will also have that mindset. It's a very common thing where the villains want to have as many of them versus as few of you as possible. So that's another way to start leadership. And if he just tries it again, just out of game, tell him, if you try this again, the same thing is going to happen. They might get mad. In fact, they most likely will be mad, because they want to be the cool guy who has a minor army doing his work for him. And if you take that away, won't be happy. But at the same time, it's a balance thing. Pathfinder and the D&Ds are made for a group of 3 to 5. So, even with NPCs, that can drastically change the difficulty of an area. So I find allowing characters to have a cohort each isn't too bad as long as you plan for it. But a lot of low-level characters, there comes a point where, why are you even going? Why are you there? You have so many people that you could literally just sit at the entrance of the dungeon and wait. It's just not as fun, considering battle slows to a crawl if you have too many people in it. So that's my opinion. Now, another opinion I have is, if they do take the leadership feat and get a large amount of people, start engaging them, instead of in adventures, in small wars. Have them have to defend a village. If each of them has about 21st level followers, make squads of 5 and have them as one unit, which they roll against the enemy units. Now, I'm not saying do this all the time, but it would be interesting, and you could get a reason, like, say, once that happens, the village that's still under attack offers to pay for the protection of these people. See, and most heroes will think that if they're good aligned, they'll think not only are they helping someone, but they're also making some money on the side. And they're just a bunch of level 1 characters. So, some parties will be like, yeah, okay. They'll discuss a fee. Maybe if it's a large fee, say, instead of having the village itself hire them, have the local lord hire the militia to protect the various villages. And then the party makes gold off of their followers. The followers are away doing their own thing. And at worst, you just have a few extra cohorts. It's not a simple problem to fix, but it's fixable if you put some effort into it. And when it comes to this, you can't be dead set on the campaign you've built. If there's anything I've learned, it's two things. One, keep your campaign vague enough that you can switch it on the fly if you need to. And two, random dungeon generators are your friends. Because I use the dungeon generator every time I see my campaign's time less than it should be. And you can easily vary things up, even if they bypass some of the things you want them to go through. Because that's part of life. Anyway, that's my bit.